Hello, thank you for joining us today at Silver Sage. My name is Joan Rudder Ward, your host, and my guest today is Otis Sanders. Otis is an extraordinary photographer. We've known each other for a number of years, and so we're going to be talking about some of his work and also his recent projects of photography tabletop books on marriage, people that have been married a long time. So Otis interviewed many couples finding out what were their secrets to a long and lasting marriage. So we're going to be taking a look at that today on Silver Sage. Thank you for joining me today, Otis.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, it's so good to see you here. Okay, now for our guests there, tell us, how long have you been involved in photography?
Well, professionally, I've been a photographer for about 25, 30 years.
Okay. All right. And tell us about some of your work. What is your favorite? Do you have a favorite subject that you like to?
I do. And my favorite subject matter is people.
People.
Yes, I'm mostly 100% people. Now, since I've been doing digital photography, I do carry a camera with me just about every day, and I shoot other things, but my main subject matter is people.
It's people. Okay. So when you say people, is it like candid type things, or is it more? People. Weddings.
Very, very few weddings. Mostly, what I like to do, I like to call character portraiture.
Oh, okay.
And before digital came around, my main thing was black and white photography. Mm-hmm. So I would photograph people in studio, on location, basically trying to get a little bit more of them other than a smiley face.
Oh, okay. Other than just a smiley face.
Yes.
So you don't want those cheese, so you're not a say cheese type of photographer then?
No. Well, now I have done photography like that, portrait photography for studios and things like that. Mm-hmm. But my photography, I like to do a little bit more. And a lot of times people don't like the fact that I'm not the cheesy photographer, but I think that I like to do it a little bit more.
Oh, okay. Okay, so when you say a little bit more, what does that entail?
Well, a little bit more is, according to me, it brings out a little bit more personality.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking at expression, mm-hmm. a lack thereof, and just the whole mannerism within the face.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, now, you're also somewhat of an adventurer when it comes to photography. Now, I remember when you did you were riding a bicycle across
West Africa.
West Africa.
Yes, yes.
Doing photos then.
Yes. Well, I think what I've heard from people that heard me talk about the story was that they always heard me talking about going to Africa to take pictures. Mm-hmm. But the real story is I wanted to go to Africa to shoot big game because I wanted to be
really?
Big game hunter. Yeah, I grew up in Alabama wanting to kill things. So, well, kill things to eat, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
But as I got older and I got into photography, I thought it would be best to go to Africa to actually photograph the animals. Mm-hmm. But since I became a people photographer, I decided to do a trip to Africa to photograph people.
Okay.
And that was basically what it was. So I decided to take a trip to Africa by bicycle and ride around and photograph people and mm-hmm. tell stories about that and just basically document the people I met, the places I went, and the things that I did.
Oh, how interesting. Okay. How long were you in Africa doing that project?
Well, the first trip was a couple months because I wanted to go over just to get, my mm-hmm. legs or my feet wet to see what it was like and if I could actually do what I wanted to do. So the first trip was about 2 months, and then a few years later I went back, and the trip that I went back for was going to be my first book. And that book was going to be where I traveled by bicycle through 6 countries in West Africa in 6 months, and wrote about my adventures in a book. And that was going to be my very first book.
Oh, okay. All right. So, how did that turn out?
Well, the second trip kind of crashed and burned. I went back over for about a month. And I wasn't able to do the things I wanted to do because of different things going on in West Africa. It wasn't quite as safe as it used to be when I went the first time to travel by bicycle alone, sleeping in a tent, those kind of things. So I did about a month or so, did a few photographs, and ended up just coming back home. And it's still in the back of my mind, but maybe next time it'll be on motorcycle, since I'm not as young as I was then. So.
Okay, a motorcycle.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you were over there, did you meet any? First of all, did you even know anyone over there when you went the first time?
Well, through a friend here, I met a young lady here. She was actually the husband of one of the, I think his title then was information officer. He worked with the U.S. Embassy. But once I got there, everything got kind of messed up and jumbled around because communication wasn't that great. I ended up arriving at 4 o'clock in the morning. Nobody knew I was coming because communication broke down. And I just kind of found myself at the airport, and there I was. So I had to just kind of make things work in a kind of a fluid type way.
Oh, okay.
So, but we did connect. I stayed with them for a while, and I would base my travels from their place and just ride out on bicycle in different parts of the cities and countryside, and just kind of just absorb people doing what they did and photograph them. But I actually didn't start photographing until about 3 weeks after I got there, because when I got there, I just put my bike together. I'd ride around, meet a few people, talk to them, and then just kind of go about my business. And then after I was comfortable and people were comfortable looking at me and seeing me on my bicycle, then I brought my camera out and started taking pictures.
Okay, I see. Okay, so did you ever run into a problem with photographing people in the sense that they felt, were there any superstitions you ran into as far as photographing people? I went to France once, and there were some refugees at the time. This was in the late 90s. Who were coming in, and these were some from an African country. I'm not sure where they came from, but they didn't want to be photographed because they said it was like they're taking part of their soul or something like that. Did you run into anything like that?
No, I did not. And another part of the whole thing is I took a background with me.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, a 9 by 15-foot background. Yeah, that was a little different, but it was real lightweight muslin, and I rolled it up and put it into one of the bags. So I would go different places. If I stayed with a family, and I would just put the background up on the balcony or something. And if they had people come over, I would ask them if I could do a portrait of them.
Really?
I was doing that, and then I would just see people out on the street, and I would just ask them if I could photograph them. Okay. So I wasn't doing the paparazzi thing because I didn't think it would be it wouldn't be a good thing for me to just go up and start sticking my camera in people's faces, which was one of the main reasons I didn't bring it out until about 3 weeks after I got there.
Oh, okay.
Because I just wanted to have people see that I'm there, and photography was important, but it wasn't that important for me to basically get in their way.
Right. Okay. Oh, okay. So you're there with a background and everything. How interesting. Yes. When you first said that, I had this mental picture in my mind of you on a bike with this big pole and everything sticking out the back. No. It wasn't like that.
No, not quite. Not quite.
All right. So did you happen to make any lasting friendships while you were there, or any connections that you still may have to this day?
They lasted for a while, but life happens and you move on and things like that. But I did. One of the guys that I met his name was Francis, and he actually conducted bicycle tours throughout the country of Ghana.
Oh, okay.
So he could ride from Accra, which is on the coast of Ghana. He could ride all the way up to the top of Ghana in about a day or two and be back.
Wow.
And that's a major feat in 100+ degree temperature.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a major feat.
Oh, okay. So what time of the year were you over there?
This was around Christmas time.
Okay, so was it cooler then, or
It's never cooler.
No.
It just wasn't raining. It wasn't raining.
Oh, okay. So is the weather usually
Hot.
warm, hot? Really?
Hot, yes, hot.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How interesting.
Yeah, very hot.
Very hot. Okay.
yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, we're going to take a break right now. We'll be right back. And okay, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back and find out more about his books, Always and Forever Love, and what it takes. This is success stories of marriages 20 plus years, still going strong. So we'll be right back.
Disaster tips from the objects left behind.
My home wasn't insured, but you can check your insurance policy now to make sure you're covered. Oh.
My savings are lost, but you can put money aside and plan for unexpected disaster costs.
We're lost forever, but you can scan important documents now so they survive.
For more tips on how to prepare, visit ready.gov.
Hi, we're back. Thank you for rejoining us. My guest today is photographer extraordinaire Otis Sanders, and we're looking at his work and also these beautiful photography tabletop books that he has on the subject of marriage. So we're going to find out why did he pick marriage as a topic. So Otis, tell us why a book on marriage. Now your work is beautiful. You're focusing, as you said, on people. In fact, these beautiful images remind me of like Life magazine, where you have these wonderful images of people in different situations and things, different settings, and getting pieces of their lives, some of the story, some of their story, which I always find people and their stories quite interesting. So, but you picked the topic of marriage. Why marriage?
Yes. Well, two reasons.
Okay.
Well, a few reasons, but I'll give you like two maybe. So remember the Africa trip crashed and burned. Mm-hmm. So that was supposed to be my first book. Didn't happen. So in the back of my mind, I'm still looking at publishing because that's what I've always wanted to do. So since that didn't work out, I was married. I got married, and my marriage ended after about 4 or 5 years. And I was wondering, it's like, why? So that started a questioning process. So what does it take to have a successful, long-standing, happy marriage? Okay. So what I did is, since mine didn't last, I was asking people who had successful marriages around me. And the first couple I asked was the actual couple on my current book. Mm-hmm. Good friends of mine, I was with them when they met. I said, hey, do you think this would be a great idea, to do something on? And they said, yeah, sure, it would be great. So what I did is I asked about 5 couples what they were doing and to keep a successful marriage. Mm-hmm. I recorded it and I wrote about it on my blog. And this was back in early 2000. Okay. So I photographed about 5 couples, interviewed them, and then left it alone for a while because that was done. I think I did it for Valentine's Day in 2001. Okay. So I left it alone. Then, it kept coming up and I'm going like, well, I need to know more because I'm not sure exactly. So then I started asking more people, and then I just decided to turn it into a book because remember, I'm still trying to get my first book done.
Right,
so
right.
It was a good idea for that. And I thought since I had that question, I'm sure other people had that question too. So I thought I'd do a book, answer my question, and maybe answer other people's questions also if they had such questions.
Okay. All right. So you had your purpose to publish a book, and you have 2 of them now. And as I said, it's beautiful work here. And at the same time, you're answering questions that others may have about what does it take to have a lasting marriage.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So gorgeous work in here. Well, tell me, okay, you have, well, tell me this first. Did you find, was there a common thread in your interviews? Was it Was there a common thread?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
well, there's many. Now, as you probably know, since you've been married and you're married still, so every marriage is different.
Yes.
But there are things that everybody looks for in marriage, and that common theme a lot of times, in addition to a lot of others, is the love, the trust, commitment, being together, and just actually wanting to be around each other and having comfort being with that person,
Yeah.
among other things. But that was basically the common thread: love, trust, and I found that a lot of spirituality had a lot to do with the couples. Most of the couples were firmly based in whatever religion, mostly Christianity. There was at least Mormons in there. There's just a lot of spiritually based people in these books, and they say that is part of what kept them together also, because they had a common ground, a common belief.
Okay. All right. Okay, good. And okay, now I do have a question. Now you have two books, and your first book, both of them are marriages 20 plus years strong.
Yes.
And now your first book is, you have diverse
Yes.
couples in this book. Okay, and then this one is African American success stories in marriage. Is there a reason why you have an African American book separate, or no? I know this book has all nationalities in it, including
that's
African American.
correct.
But this one was basically focusing on African Americans
Only, yes.
only, right?
Only,
Okay, so what brought that about?
Well, in doing it that way, I get two books instead of one.
Oh,
But at the same time, one of the questions I had also was marriage difference. Was
okay.
marriage different for the races, or different from one race to the next? So that's why I had some black people, white people, yellow people, and green people. Well, figuratively. But I had a lot of different ethnic groups in this book, because I wanted to see and ask those questions myself and see if I could see a difference between marriage
Okay.
for the races. So that was the reason I did the first book like that. Now, the second book I did specifically because, as an African American and African American in marriage, again, myself, you always hear about the terrible things that happen in marriage. And it's not just in African American marriages, all marriages. You always hear about the bickering, this, that, and the other. And then one of the things, too, is that people always say, whether it's said out loud or just thought or whatever, is that African Americans don't have long-standing marriages because of the images that you see in media and stuff like that. So I wanted to actually put my 2 cents in and show that there is a large segment of African Americans that have long-standing marriages. This day, just as it was back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, because in most homes in America, marriages had a mother and a father.
Right,
And they were both
right.
doing their things to raise a family.
right, right. And did you find? Well, okay. Well, let me see. Okay, and statistics pretty much tell us that, what is it like? Just 50%.
It's
of
about
marriages?
50% of marriages fail. Yes.
Okay. Do you have any idea of like what remarriage rates are like, or do you need any statistics on that?
I don't, but a lot of people, some of the people in both books are on their second marriage, and some
are
of them
they?
were on their third marriages. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
these people do believe in love. They do believe in the fact that marriage will work. I think what happens is that sometimes we don't always make the right choices.
Right.
So as we live and learn, we try and make better choices. And some of these people have made better choices, or the choice, because this book goes from people that have been married from 20 years all the way up to 75 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you have someone that's been married that long in the book?
Yes. Well,
75 years?
in this book, there's one couple in there, Willie and Eliza James. They were, when I did the interview, he was 102 and she was
Wow.
98, 99. And at that time, they were about 73, 74, 75 years of marriage. Yes.
Wow.
Until his passing. He passed a few years after the book came out, and she just passed like maybe not more than 6 months or so ago.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm sure they have an interesting story to tell.
Well, it was really interesting in the fact that he and they both didn't remember much about the marriage because they're up in age. But what he remembered most was him hanging out with my father, because he's in Alabama and I'm from Alabama.
Okay.
So he hung out with my father, and those were the stories that he liked to tell, as opposed to the marriages.
Oh, really?
But he said, "I love her. She loved me. We wanted to be together. We got together, and we stayed together."
Yeah. Wow.
And it's just that simple sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. True. You know what? And then I don't think this is stereotypical, but me also being of Alabama heritage, just knowing that in the South, it seemed like people, at least then, stayed together,
Yes.
longer, and, they made that commitment and they stuck through it, thick and thin, even when
Yes.
stuff was bad, they
Yeah.
would.
And even
hang in
in
there.
these times, with everything going on within, without, people are still doing it.
Yeah.
As hard as it may seem for people. And then a lot of times people don't realize that there are a lot of successful marriages around them. They just don't know it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because it's not the thing that people talk about every day. You don't see that on the news.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's
so
true.
you don't really think about it until you hear a friend says, "Oh, my grandfather and grandmother, they're still married, and blah, 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 my mother and father." There's a lot going on, even though, you always hear about the single mother raising kids and stuff like that.
Right, that's true. That's true. Okay, I just want to ask you too. How did your parents, were they married a long time, or
No.
no?
Well, actually, I take that back. They were. Now, there's 10 kids. I'm the seventh son and the last of 10 kids. And my
really?
mother left my father when I was 4 years old. As a matter of fact, that is part of the author's notes in this current book, is
Okay.
that it started out something like, "Miles," my mother's speaking, she says, "Miles, if you don't treat me better, you're going to come home one day and I'll be gone."
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then
Wow.
my grandfather came down in his 50-something pickup and loaded us on the back of the truck, and we left and never
Really?
went back. Yeah, they never divorced, but they were separated for the remainder of both of their lives.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that too was another reason too, because since I didn't grow up with my father, I didn't know what the mother-father relationship was like, or a father-son relationship. So, and I'm wondering if that was part of the reason that my first marriage didn't work. I don't know, but I had to find that out. And I didn't find out what a father-son relationship was like until I went to college and saw one of my good friends interact with his father. So
Really?
it was one of those things where, even though I got divorced and I had a son, I didn't want my son to grow up without me. And
Oh,
that's
okay.
kind of on to another story. But
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's good. That you had that determination to make sure that your son didn't grow up without you. Okay. So how long have you been married now?
my second marriage in October would be 15 years.
Oh, okay. Great. That's wonderful.
This one works.
Yeah. Yeah, we just have to, find that thing that works,
Yeah.
and so then, and when we do, it's great. I know that myself.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yes,
Okay. All right. So we're going to take a break right now. So we're going to take a break and we will return shortly.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Otis, I want to thank you so much for coming on today.
The pleasure was mine. It was very enjoyable.
Okay, great. I'm glad. Okay, so now we're going to treat you to a presentation of Otis's beautiful images. So sit back and enjoy yourself.